And we are back with another episode of Berger returning to the show. Harrison, how are you doing today?
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Kyle. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have you on. Since the last time we chatted, you actually wrote an article for antiwar.com, and we'll be talking about that today. And of course, we'll have to talk about the peace deal that Trump rolled out, and if you think this thing is actually going to work. First, want to mention the sponsor of today's show, and that is the Expat Money Summit 2025. This is a fantastic annual online event. They do it every year. Always great information on crafting your perfect plan B. This year, there is a specific emphasis on how to move abroad to Latin or South America, what countries you can own property in, what your tax situation is like there. Maybe they help you save a little bit of money. You could get a second passport. Really important questions are answered at this conference. It is this weekend, October 10th through the 12th. So you do not want to wait any longer to get your free ticket to the event. Just go to expatmoneysummit.com. If you want to access some of the bonus panels they have, you could get a VIP ticket to the event at expatmoneysummit.com. You save 20% when you use the promo code Kyle. All right, everyone, let's talk about it. Donald Trump on Truth Social announces that there's a big peace deal in the Middle East. He says that Israel and Hamas have agreed to the first phase of his peace plan. He says this means all the hostages will be released very soon, and Israel will withdraw their troops to an agreed upon line as the first steps towards a strong, durable, and everlasting peace. Harrison, what do you make of these major developments that we've had over the past 24 hours?
Well, I think it's hard to predict the future, especially given that Israel has a record of violating its ceasefires. It did it before in January with the last deal that Trump brokered. And so there's every expectation that people have for Israel to do it again. On the other hand, it is a positive thing that many people in Gaza, and I say many because many cannot, can actually breathe a sigh of relief. Unfortunately, Israel does continue to bomb Gaza and kill people and Palestinians living there. At least 9 were killed today, probably many more since last I checked. And so, again, they're already violating the ceasefire that they signed. The expectation that they're going to fulfill every term of the deal that they've just agreed to, I'm not sure many people believe that.
Yeah, and this is actually very interesting. This is what Jeremy Scahill reported. He said he spoke to it, I guess, an official that was close to Hamas, who explained that for Hamas, this is basically a gamble on Trump's integrity. If Donald Trump forces Israel to implement this deal, they'll be seen as victors, as having been very savvy and done the right thing. And if Trump allows Netanyahu to go back on this deal, then they're going to look like utter fools because they've given up all their leverage up top. All the Israeli hostages, all the bodies of the dead hostages are returned to Israel. And then he's expecting Netanyahu to do something that he hasn't been willing to do in the past. And so, how do you see this? I guess I know you say the future is hard to predict, but what, just your opinions. Does this actually end up turning out to be a permanent end to the hostilities in Gaza, or is Israel going to maybe take a pause, get their hostages back, let their troops rest a little bit, and we'll see something similar to what we saw in the spring?
Well, again, the reason why the first deal did not pan out was because the Trump administration failed to exert any pressure on Israel to enforce it. And as Trita Parsi actually wrote in Responsible Statecraft today, he has a great article on this. The peace deal has all the potential to work. In many aspects, I can talk about some areas where it does not work afterward, but it does have the potential to last for a while, as long as Trump enforces it and exerts pressure on Israel, which so far, again, he's really failed to do in a number of very critical cases. The strikes on Iran and our increasing escalation to war with that foreign government, once again, as another example of that. I'd say, though, an area where Palestinians will have no relief has to do with the Israeli occupation itself. Israel will keep many soldiers within Gaza, and their plan is to open the Rafah corridor.
Harrison, I think we lost your audio here, so I'm sure producer Chris will try to help get it back on. Um,
I
I
apologize.
Oh, there you go. Go ahead.
Oh, I was saying, well, Israel is open up the Rafah crossing, and it seems like their plan is to drive Palestinians further south and then into Egypt. That seems like the goal of that move. So the ethnic cleansing, it does seem like will continue, but the daily bombings and massacres, it does look like at least that will slow down a little bit.
Yeah, one thing that I thought was interesting with all of this is a report out of Israel Hayam, where they say two really important things. One, they got confirmation from Israeli and American officials that there's a side deal in place where the United States has guaranteed Israel that Israel will have the U.S. full backing if Hamas violates the agreement in any way. And so, if we continue to see Israeli strikes and Hamas resist, if they say, oh, we don't want to give your soldiers back, I think Netanyahu is going to interpret that as a violation of the deal. And then he has full backing. And this is something that they had agreed to during the January ceasefire that lasted, I guess, until early March. And so, I think we could see something very similar play out this time around where there is going to be a pause in fighting. The Israeli troops will get some time to rest. The Israeli troops will withdraw a little bit in Gaza, but there's still going to be a few Palestinians dying every day. So the death toll is going to continue to tick up. More aid will get in. The Palestinian captives will be released. Then the Israeli forces will be ready to go back to war. And Netanyahu will say, the Palestinians are breaking the deal. Now we have to go back in, and we have Trump's full backing. I thought the other interesting part of all of this was the Israelis were only interested in making a deal with the Palestinians after they found the Palestinians were not conditioning the release of the hostages on the Trump plan getting on to phase B. And so phase A is the ceasefire, the hostage release, and phase B would then be starting the reconstruction of Gaza, the Palestinian technocrats taking over Gaza. And that's something we saw during the first agreement as well, where as soon as it was signed, the Israelis were saying, well, we only committed to a 6-week fire. We only committed to phase one. Now we're going to talk about phase two. And whenever phase two came, the Israelis found all kinds of excuses to break the deal. So, any thoughts on that?
Right. Well, I completely agree, and Israeli commentators seem to agree too. They're openly discussing in Jerusalem Post, among other outlets, this idea that if Hamas violates any of the terms, Israel, of course, can violate the terms they did today. They broke the ceasefire by killing women and children like they always do every single day. But Israel can do that and will face no consequences. But if Hamas breaks any of the terms, Israel will have the green light to, restart the genocide. And it looks like many in Israel are actually hoping for that outcome. What you have to remember here is that this war has been really the expression of a kind of Israeli bloodlust. I mean, I know that there's this attempt to blame it on a few government figures like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir and Netanyahu, but that's not really the case. If you look at the polling, the majority of Jewish Israelis do want to treat these Palestinians like, Amalek, to go in and, kill their families. And they actually take glee in it. Again, they post all of these videos on their social media showing their brutality against Palestinian life. And I think that's kind of an urge that's very difficult to tame. And it's something that requires President Trump to step in, and let's see if he has the courage and the will to do it this time.
So, Harrison, one of the things that's really allowed all of this to happen is the propaganda around October 7th and the Hamas attack. And I know you have a really interesting article coming out soon on this. And so I wanted to ask you, now that we're 2 years later, what you think. And I think in your article, you're going to describe essentially an industry around October 7th that formed to, not just explain what happened on October 7th, but this most extreme narrative that has led a lot of Americans to say, well, if Hamas is willing to do that, if Palestinians will do that to Israelis, then the Israelis have no choice but to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for asking about that. I do have a new piece that will be coming out soon about what I call the October 7th industry, because that's what it is. It's this propaganda industry that's propped up to insist that October 7th was all about Jew hatred, motivated by nothing else, had nothing to do with the decades-long repression of Palestinian life in Gaza and the West Bank, had nothing to do with just general Israeli anti-democratic, apparatuses wielded against Palestinian life, but it was because all these people in Hamas are just a bunch of Nazis who hate Jews. And that's basically the narrative that's been hammered into Americans' minds for the past 2 years. But over in Israel, there's an entirely different conversation. Israelis are demanding official state inquiries into what happened. They're looking at the fact that soldiers were told to, stand down at 5 a.m. From the Gaza border, basically seemingly allowing the attack to happen. There are questions about the use of the Hannibal Directive, which has been confirmed in multiple Israeli media reports from Haaretz to Channel 12, in which Israel they mass murdered their own civilian population preemptively in order to prevent them being taken hostage by Hamas. And of course, we now know that there were no mass rapes, that didn't happen, and we know that there were no beheaded babies either. Israelis have done the journalism to debunk those really pernicious lies. And yet, as I said, in the United States, we're really banned from having this conversation. I say that we're banned from having it because you will get censored on TikTok if you talk about the Hannibal Directive, if you question mass rapes, all because of the censorship apparatus that the Israeli government has installed across all social media platforms to ban any type of honest discussion about October 7th. And so instead, there's this kind of, religious mythology around what happened that day, which serves a deeply propagandistic purpose. It's to justify this perpetual Israeli war, that, if anti-Semitism is this eternal phenomenon and, October 7th was this raw expression of it, then the Jewish state, which is what Israel claims to be, although they don't represent me at all and I'm Jewish, then that state has every obligation and right, so this narrative goes, to act in self-defense. And by self-defense, to preemptively mass murder Palestinians by the tens of thousands and likely hundreds of thousands in Gaza. And so that's really what the October 7th industry is.
Fantastic analysis there. Now, next, I want to ask you about this really great article you wrote for antiwar.com titled America's Ongoing Humiliation Ritual. And I had this clip. This is Matt Gaetz, former congressman, as he's hosting Timcast, talking about the relationship people in Congress have with the state of Israel and their donors.
Initially, I resented the fact that there was no appreciation for nuance. Like if you asked any questions about any decision of the Israeli government in any place regarding settlements, regarding Gaza, whatever, you were like, you had deviated from the script. And I just, in any policy area, I had resentment over that. And then I saw the way the APAC worked, and that was weird for like a country lawyer like me. I remember my first APAC reception, and like your fundraiser tells you have to go, and your chief of staff tells you have to go, your committee chairman all tell you have to go, and you get there and you wear this name badge, and I remember there's a QR code on it. And what we were supposed to do was go talk to donors, and then if they liked you, they scanned your QR code to make a donation, like on the spot. And so can you just imagine how demoralizing that is to like be told that your job for the next several hours to go chat people up, hoping they would scan you like a can of tomato soup on the way out of the meeting.
I mean, it's literally purchasing.
Right. And so I saw that and I was like, wow, that is so freaking weird. And then, I was in Israel. I went multiple times, and I did not like the fact that I found someone in my room rooting around in my stuff that should not have been there at the King David Hotel when I came back to my room when no one was expecting me to be back in my room. And I just
presumably Israeli law enforcement.
I don't know who it was. I just thought, like, this is weird. All of these things combined are odd, and then the policy outgrowth seems to be an obsession about the Middle East that has not served my generation well.
So, Harrison, what do you make of this, where we see a former congressman talking about how him and his fellow congressmen are purchased for the benefit of a foreign government, that our congressmen are spied on when they travel to one of our supposed greatest allies?
I mean, why are, our politicians being treated like, cattle by these, Zionist donors? It's very bizarre. It makes no sense at all, but it is humiliating. And, the general sense that people my age have, whether they're on the left or the right, is that Congress and even the presidency is owned, by Israel, whether through the Israel lobby, or some people even speculate blackmail. I'm not endorsing that claim, but just referencing it, what others believe. And I think that those sentiments that Matt Gaetz expressed are part of that trend. Everyone can see this. That clip went viral on TikTok too, even despite the Zionist censorship on it, on that social media platform. There's really no words to say about it. It's just kind of embarrassing. And in the case of what I wrote about, this humiliation ritual, we have American citizens who were detained by Israel, and they were part of this flotilla, which was organized to distribute humanitarian aid to the population of Gaza that's currently experiencing a famine. And so Americans volunteered to bring them that aid that Israel had blocked for months, only allowing the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, to distribute that aid in most areas. And Israel intercepted their boats, the boats of these, among others, Americans, in international waters, and illegally detained them, put them in prison, treated them extremely poorly for many days, and not a single U.S. official in the administration protested it, said anything about it. Americans. And John Mearsheimer said it a bunch of years ago, I think like a decade ago, that, if he went over there, and something happened to him, no one would do anything about it. And this is the evidence. Americans are killed all the time in the West Bank, like Shireen Abu Akleh, the journalist who was killed in 2022. Joe Biden did absolutely nothing about it. There's no consequences for Israel, no matter what they do to American citizens, it seems. And it is humiliating.
Yeah. No, it as you said, embarrassing, humiliating are certainly the top words that come to my mind when I think of the U.S.-Israeli relationship. And it should be more upsetting to the average American. But, fortunately, I think for the first time in decades and decades and decades, this is maybe a real thing that people are waking up to. People have seen what Israel is doing to the Palestinian people in Gaza, and as it's gone on, and they've kept throwing out the same mudslinging anti-Semite, it it's starting to lose its effectiveness, because anybody who opposes a dead Palestinian child is somehow an anti-Semite is going to make everybody just not care about being called an anti-Semite anymore. And I think there's like a lot of negative consequences to that dynamic, but it was created by Benjamin Netanyahu himself in this war. And now Israel is launching this massive propaganda campaign. I think $1.4 million. I saw Dave DeCamp wrote this at antiwar.com for a mobile October 7th lab, where they're going to drive around and give people VR headsets and force them to hear about how awful what got Hamas did on October 7th was. I'm sure, just like I recently heard Pete Buttigieg say, I think, repeat the beheaded babies myth. Like the elites still believe all of that, or at least still repeat it all. And so I think that's what the people are going to be bombarded with. Do you see any ability of Israel to actually turn around their public image, whether it's through purchases of like TikTok and CBS News by the Ellisons, or Israel's paid for propaganda campaigns and TikTok influencers?
Well, for now, they've completely lost the propaganda war. I mean, their public image is completely obliterated. Their genocide has been a disaster for just what they call the legitimacy of Israel. Many and increasingly people, a number of people, view Israel as an illegitimate state and what they call an apartheid state. Most people now in the United States do believe that Israel has been committing genocide. What I believe and what they've announced is that they plan to use this apparatus to kind of rewrite the history book. So kind of less in the short term, because they've already lost those battles, but the longer war of kind of deleting the genocide that they've seemingly just finished from collective consciousness, I think is a larger project and one to come. I mean, they basically did that with the Iraq War, if you remember. That was a major war crime, war of aggression, and we killed over 1 million people. And when people talk about it now, they just say, oh, it was a mistake. I mean, it was more than a mistake. It was intentional. It was horrible. And one of the worst things to happen in American history that we've ever done. But it's called a mistake. I think something very similar will happen with Israel's genocide.
Yeah, especially I think there's been a real effort in the United States to set the stage to blame all this on Netanyahu, Itamar Ben-Gvir, and Bezalel Smotrich. And then when a new Israeli government comes in led by the war criminal Benny Gantz or someone else, they're going to pretend like everything's just normal in Israel once again. No genocide, no apartheid going on here, while I'm sure it's going to continue to pick up. Everybody, I do have to end the show a little bit early today. Sorry about that, Harrison. It was absolutely great talking with you again. I'll definitely want to have you back on the show soon, and I look forward to reading some of your articles. Hopefully we can run a few more of them at antiwar.com in the future.
Perfect. Thanks so much for having me, Kyle. I really appreciate it. It's always good to talk to you.
Absolutely.